Forge! Gang! I'm still a hard man! Alrighty then, it is your host, Imperator of Forge. And I am going to be working on that cabinet over there in just a second. It needs to be affixed. It needs some fixing. Yes, that cabinet right there needs to be fixed. I will go ahead and get started, but right now I'm going to watch this at the same time.
Good now to whoever and wherever you are across the world. I hope you're doing well. Before we get into the heart of this video, I thought I would spend 5 or 10 minutes going over a few things, a little preface here, talking about, what this video is about, why I'm doing this video, and who it's geared towards. And we'll start with that one. So, whether it's you or anyone else out there watching this, maybe you were raised religious or not, but in either case, you find yourself thinking, or perhaps questioning things, spinning the hamster wheel, and just trying to understand yourself and, this life, as absurd as it is, as mysterious as it is in terms of the truth. Maybe this video will help you, and if it doesn't give you many answers, because it's really not, hopefully at least, you're not alone. There's, I'm not the only one thinking like this. And speaking of the truth, the reason that I'm labeling this video eliminating truths is because while our existences are subjective, it's really hard to step outside of ourselves to really understand everything. It's very, the lives that we live are very subjective and very personal. And it's really hard to understand and find out what the objective truth is, especially in this day and age. With the internet, technology, misinformation, disinformation, etc., etc. So, while, these subjects, these philosophies, might be subjective, might not be the truth, I like to think there is some truth to it. And so, I'm just going to go out on a limb and call anarchism, atheism, and nihilism the truth. And I'm not here to argue or point my finger and say you're wrong. If you don't agree, you are free to climb up and stand on the hill of whatever belief you whatever your convictions are and disagree and die on that hill, that's fine. I'm going to die on this hill. But it's really not about I'm right and you're wrong. That's not what this is about. Alright? And when it comes to liberating truths, we'll get into what that's all about. And another thing to briefly touch on before we start drawing the Venn diagram, which will be my first Venn diagram I've ever drawn, whether it's on this channel or the entire 53 years of my life. I don't have a recollection of ever drawing a Venn diagram before, so. But I just lost my train of thought. But another thing to touch on is there may be more truth than just anarchism, nihilism, and atheism. There might be other philosophies or schools of thought that you could easily attach to this video or include, but I'm going over atheism, anarchism, and nihilism because ever since I started to learn about them on my own, I never went to college or any of that. I'm not a teacher. Okay. Ever since my 30s, back in the early 2000s, with the advent of the internet, I just started to go on this path of discovery, self-discovery, trying to make sense of things. Inequality, corruption, religion, philosophies, all of it, because I was born and raised Roman Catholic, quite a strict religion, though not as strict as maybe Islam or Orthodox Judaism, but still strict nonetheless. And I eventually left my religion behind. It wasn't easy. And I just started to, think about things. So, another reason why we're here. So there might be other philosophies or schools of thought which are also liberating truth, such as Stoicism, for example. But the reason I'm sticking to anarchism, atheism, and nihilism, I like to consider those the big three. The trifecta, the three-headed hydra of truth.
All right. I have gotten everything out of the cabinet now. So now I can finally go ahead and do some work. Anyways, how are you guys doing? Total Janny Def says Forge. Rick Perry says gang. Rick Perry says hi Rick Perry. I stopped watching Keeping Up Appearances for this. Yeah, so anyways, there's no God. More than likely, there is no God and there is no creator. And there is no really any real religion. There's no God, and the state is a tyranny. That's all I have to say. Anyways, I'm going to fix this cabinet.
And any other, I just keep going back to those three. My mind always just goes back to them. And while I used to think of them as separate entities, separate schools of thought, just like you saw in this thumbnail, I actually have a lot more in common than we think. And that's what I was thinking about a few weeks prior to this video. I've been thinking about anarchism off and on for the past 20 years, nihilism the same, and atheism, since, since I was a teen in the 80s, though I never really knew it as atheism. Alright, so, yeah. There could be some other truths, some other schools of thought you can include here. But I'm just going to stick with these three for now. That's where my mind is. If 6 months from now, I have a new perspective on things, we can revisit this idea. And one of the other reasons for doing this video is not just to reach anyone or, to kind of have this discussion, though we really can't talk, but to reach anyone who's not just thinking like this, but then who's dealing with the existential nature of these topics, the anxiety, the depression that sometimes not comes along with, but intersects with these subjects, especially nihilism. And while they can seem negative and depressing to think about, to talk about, I actually think it's quite the opposite, which another reason why I'm calling this video The Liberating Truths. Not just do I think that these three schools of thought, these three philosophies are the truth, are very close to the objective truth of what life, of just not just the meaning of life, but how life exists and what it all means, and if there is any meaning. So they're not just the truths, but they're liberating, very free, almost in a positive manner. And while you can be depressed going through, or you can be going through a depressive phase, and you're thinking about nihilism, I don't think it's nihilism that creates depression. Nihilism is just a truth. And while it maybe can be shattering to any previous beliefs or ideals or outlook you may have had, once you begin to just take it all in and understand it, or atheism or anarchism, it's quite liberating. And so we'll go over that. Alright. So I think that's it for the little intro here. Like I said, I just kind of want to, the reason I'm doing this is it's kind of like a eureka moment for me in terms of my own perspective, and maybe this little, maybe it'll help give you, help you gain perspective as well. In terms of what these different schools of thought have in common, I don't think I've ever seen or heard anyone talk about anarchism, atheism, and nihilism in such a related way. And the commonality that they share, usually when you read about Nietzsche or Emma Goldman, Bakunin, Marx, right? They talk about anarchism. Maybe they talk about God a little bit. Atheism. They seem to talk about these different philosophies and schools of thought, ideologies, but I don't think they've ever put them all together. Maybe Nietzsche has. I'm not a big student on these different people. They've all had their like me and you and the billions of people that have ever existed. We all have our own opinion and kind of mindset of how we should be doing things. But this isn't, like I said, just to finish up here. And this isn't about me preaching how we should do this or how we should do that. This is I'm just sharing this because it's just, I find it interesting. And, maybe it'll help someone or at least, we can relate, you know what I mean? That we share the same kind of thoughts. All right. So I'm going to go over, and I guess the last thing I want to say. Maybe you're not too familiar. Maybe you're familiar with nihilism. Maybe you're not familiar with any of these schools of thought or philosophies. Maybe you're young and you're just starting to go down this path of just trying to make sense of things. And you have yet to dabble into anything philosophical. And don't let the word philosophical or intellectual scare you. It doesn't mean that has nothing to do with someone being better. It doesn't mean you need to be, go to college and have a master's degree and all that. Right, so it's a good thing. There seems to be a lot of anti-smart or anti-intellectualism, whatever, going on, or it's always going on. And I know there are some people that may have learning disabilities or lack in education, so they hate any kind of quote-unquote smart or intellectual discussion because they don't understand it, so they bash it. But I think one, and this is totally unrelated, but I think it's bad when you don't feel like you're quote-unquote smart. And so or maybe you're hanging around with friends who don't like smart things, so to speak. And so you find yourself
there we go,
down to their level. But you find yourself where you find these people not just hating, not so much, just kind of acting dumb. I don't know how to put it. They think it's cool to be dumb and to not be smart. Right? They feel like just, maybe you've been around or you've seen this. There's one or two people, they have a group of friends, and they want to, exercise their mind to its fullest potential. And you just want to be smart and you want to, be more knowledgeable and educated. And these other people kind of feel threatened by that. And so, they'll, anyway, I think you understand what I'm getting at. You can sometimes not allow yourself to reach your full potential or not want to educate yourself or oneself. Someone might not want to educate themselves or gain more knowledge because of their peers, right? And peers or their friends, whoever it might think. You might lose your friend. I think you understand what I'm getting at, right? So wanting to to gain more knowledge. And I'm not talking from a personal place. I'm just saying there's nothing wrong with wanting to be more knowledgeable. But there's only a problem when people kind of, flaunt how smart they are or how much knowledge they have. Now that's kind of annoying, right? I might fall and do that once in a while. I try to avoid that. I might know a little about a lot. I might know a lot on certain things, but there's plenty I don't know, like carpentry, electrical work, how to fly a plane, do surgery, etc., right? So I don't think anyone likes a know-it-all or a show-off, a braggart, and I try to keep myself very down to earth and not slip into those kind of things. But there is absolutely nothing wrong with wanting to educate yourself and gain more knowledge and be quote unquote smart about certain things. And who knows, it can lead you to a better job or career or who knows what. So don't let other folks drag you down, and, or not necessarily you, but that's kind of what I was getting at. Certain people will, this whole anti-intellectual, anti-being smart and knowledgeable thing. Okay, so that's like my mini rant. Alright, so let's get on with the whole purpose why we're here. So let me draw a few circles.
I forgot to take these out.
And then we'll call that one anarchism. I think that's kind of big. I don't know. Too big. That's a little better. Make two more of them. Call this one atheism. Leave them like that for now. Before we join them together, let's go on. We'll touch on each one.
All right, it's done.
And again, I'm not here to preach.
Let's see here. I got it done in 21 minutes. Let's see. Total Janny Death says, hi, Total Janny Death. Total Janny Death says, Forge. Rick Perry says, gang. Rick Perry said, hi, Rick Perry. Rick Perry, I stopped watching Keeping Up Appearances for this. What is that? Yeah, what show is that? Crackbit0 says, love from India and hearts emoji. Rick Perry says, don't let depression color your perspective. It happens to the best of us. I'm not. Rick Perry says, I don't have any tools, but I am just a girl who uses men. Well, honestly, that's pretty manipulative. That's pretty manipulative. The Great says, Forge gang! Rick Perry says, hard men. The Great says, hello there, The Great. Hello there, Ryuko. Let's see here. The Great says, based Warhammer showing the neats how to be a real hard man. Alright, Rick Perry has strong arm. Rick Perry says, I use these. The Great says, this video is sponsored. Based. Based. Rick Perry says, Warhammer has been granted an endorsement from the Open Society Foundation. The Great says, sweet decoration. Thanks, man. It's a very small, tiny little kitchen, though. Rick Perry, the kitchen is figuratively the heart of the home. I can't live without a well-ordered kitchen. It fuels my enterprise. KUA is a 90s British sitcom. It's very old world. A girl's gotta do what a girl's gotta do. Anyways, this is The Liberating Truths of Anarchism, Atheism, and Nihilism, ASMR. It looks like it's been, freaking... Oh, come on, dude. For real, man. It actually froze. Are you kidding me, bro? Yeah. You won't believe this, but the television froze. For fuck's sake. Shaggy's latest stream has been fire. Yeah, I guess he's okay. Let me get back on YouTube. Oh, it's frozen again. I don't know what's going on, but the controls, maybe the batteries are dying in the control. There we go. Yeah, I'm clicking on the buttons and they're not doing anything. Oh, it's because that's in the way. Oh, shit. It's because of that. Okay, that's why it blocked the signal. Okay, search. Okay, open YouTube. Damn. Watch as guest. How do I go to my history? Here it is.
I'm being told this is legal email from Liberty Mutual, who helps save you hundreds by customizing your car insurance.
And his partner, Doug, is the gentleman under the security guard.
Only paying for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
We have over 600 vendors worldwide. There's a lot on our plate. It's way too many emails. But with Gemini and Gmail, we can instantly...
No. Okay, that's his name. Alright, so now I have to take the door down. Yeah, I have to take the fucking door down, and I have to fix it. So here goes. Just go ahead and go into anarchism.
In terms of providing an explanation for that's big enough. And then we'll call that one anarchism. I think that's kind of big. Little too oops. Yeah, too big. There's a little better. I know. Make call this one atheism. Alright, so
No, that's
stay
not
like that for now. Before we join them together, let's go over. We'll touch on each one. In case you're not familiar with them. And again, I'm not here to preach. And while I think these are the truths, in terms of providing an explanation for how organisms live, how the universe operates. Again, we are a product of the universe. We didn't create it. So we can't know for sure. I like to think that these three philosophies or schools of thought to explain life in the universe and the universe itself, and how everything operates. So anarchism. So this might be one of the big three that is lesser known. Most folks know that atheism, I would say first and foremost, nihilism, second, third. So anarchism is basically a philosophy and an ideology. It basically says human beings don't need bosses or political leaders or gods to operate and function. That we should all live and with some kind of cooperation. But we own the labor, and everything is the decisions are made by us and not by there's no government like that.
As of right now, there is nothing holding that door together.
Into this, if you don't know much about it.
Alright, just like that, it came off.
And there are other
Nice.
subsets of anarchism, such as anarcho-communism, and the one that I like, anarcho-primitivism, which
Alright, now I can fix this damn door.
should be living a more primitive life. Now, the reason I think anarchism is a truth is it's not so much the whole of anarchism. It's not so much the ideology. It's not so much the ideology that's the truth. It's not so much the entire work of anarchism or the philosophy of it. but it's the fact that its root core is the truth that the reality of all of life on this planet and even the universe itself is anarchy. Chaos. There is no rhyme or reason. Every organism on this planet goes about its business. It's humans, bees, deer, parasites, birds, fish, you name it. They're only driven by hunger, thirst, right? Either one or two, whatever, and reproduction. Right, so, and no creature, as far as I can tell, and a lot of people can tell, answers to laws or any god. There's just, they just answer to appetite, hunger, thirst, and reproduction. Just the daily need to get sustenance, to maintain your, caloric intake every day, so you just continue living, and then reproduction when necessary, right? And so and then as far as the universe is concerned, there might be patterns, but it's random, it's chaos. The universe doesn't answer to a god or a boss. And the only reason, and then politics and government and other man-made religions, they're just that, man-made constructs, okay? Human beings came first, as far as I can tell, and as far as others can tell, and you might agree. If you disagree, that's fine. But human organisms and everything came first. And then, the only organism that has politics is us humans. I mean, if you want to start talking, there's politics among chimpanzees. Okay, but I think you understand when it comes to society we live in, and the government and the religion, that's all man-made. I have never encountered a alien being flying in a spaceship. I've never encountered God of any kind, heard voices, seen anything. I've never seen ghosts. I've never seen any kind of cryptid, like a Bigfoot, etc. And I've never seen any conclusive evidence by anyone to suggest those things exist. Alright, so.
Alrighty then.
So as far as I'm concerned,
I'm going to be using wood glue.
the root of it, anarchy.
So, give me a second
There
here.
are no masters. There's no God. Right? You're free to do whatever you.
Alright, so are y'all getting the basics of anarchism? I really hope he survives what Elandrian was not strong to. Axel becomes their motherly figure. This is much worse. What in the hell are y'all talking in chat? LOL, he used to puke and piss on himself live from the trailer. Alright, so there's the door. So, I got to put this on the bottom of that. That's what I got to do. Yes, indeed. Alright, so the door is off. I'm going to listen to the rest of anarchism and stuff.
One, I'm not saying you're free to do whatever you want, but don't want to condone doing anything illegal, but that's a truth. Anarchy that answers just why, or it kind of provides an answer in the liberating mentality as far as how one should live their life. And that's kind of very liberating. Ideally, I would
This thing is very rotten.
Primitive or an indigenous, person, hunting, gathering, whenever you want, leisure, whenever you want. To me, that was hunter-gatherer society was peak society, and then it was all downhill from there. And I'm going to talk about that in another video, maybe a week or two from here, about the greatest heist in human history. It's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to doing that one. But, so anyway, I don't want to spend too much time on each school of thought or philosophy, but the one reason I call, after a lot of thought, after thinking about anarchism off and on for the past 20 years, and gaining new perspective on life and all that, I have come to my own conclusion that it's one of many truths that, as far as the universe is concerned, how it operates, why it operates, and who operates it, no one. And every organism on this planet, they do what they do, just following their biological processes, their need to eat every day, to feed, and that's it. There's no God, there's no bosses, there's just energy, random interactions, things doing what they do just to eat, to reproduce, for territory, fighting over resources. And that's it. It's anarchy. And you've created a society that tries to put order to the chaos, to the anarchy. And you can say it doesn't really work. You can say it kind of works. But again, I'm not going to go into all that. We have to spend an entire hour going over whether or not, society works. So that's anarchism. There's a lot more to it.
There, got it. In. Yes.
For all practical purpose, for the intent, of this video. Gotta simplify things. Otherwise, we'd be here in
Okay, I got it in.
Anarchism alone.
Damn.
Anarchism is one of the three. At least one of the three. Could be more. Like I said, we can get into
Okay.
different philosophies and schools of thought. But I think these are the big three. And anarchism answers why we do what we do, why the universe operates like it operates, because it's just chaos, randomness, and anarchy. That's it. There's no rules. There really are no rules. There's patterns. There's a need to eat, right? And then reproduce if you want. But that's it. Alright? And coming to that realization can be somewhat scary. Maybe depressing for some people. Right? But anarchism, anarchy, the root of it, I think that answers things. In terms of the order, the function, why things happen or don't happen. Alright, atheism. This is another truth. And this is more about the truth of whether a God or not exists. Anarchism, and you'll see the three of these. I'll get to the Venn diagram and I'll join the three circles. But for now, come over each one. But atheism is all about religion. So, and atheism basically explains the truth about whether or not a God exists. This is one of the most controversial, heated debates of human existence, and it will be for who knows how long. Will human beings ever come together and realize, there is no God? Or are we always going to be on two separate sides of the coin? But again, as far as I'm concerned, and a lot of other folks, there is no God. And it's very liberating. It's very liberating because I don't answer to anyone. That's what's so liberating about all of these things. I wake up every day. I live the life how I decide, based on my rules. Now, I live my life within the confines of law. Right? So, I could if I wanted to steal and kill, but I'm not going to, because I'd rather not go to jail. Of course, we get into some gray area, self-defense, things like that. But just in terms of how I go about my life on a daily business, on a daily basis, I have no need to steal, no need to kill, no need to do anything that would end me up landing in prison or jail. And it's not the fear of law, the fear of prison, that is why I don't do. I have no desire to do anything, the result of which would land me in prison. I have no desire to, while I am a misanthrope. At times, I've done the video, humanity, a love-hate relationship.
Oops.
There's times when I hate our human race and our species, but yet at the same time, there's that hate on the one hand, and the other hand, there's the love and appreciation for the things that human beings have done. So it's a duality, it's a dilemma, conundrum, okay? But, so I don't want to get too much off track here, but in terms of atheism answers is the truth, as far as I'm concerned. If there was a God, I always think about this, if there was a God, wouldn't I already have some kind of intrinsic thought or connection to this God? And if there was a God, why are there so many different religions? And if there was a God, why can't, why hasn't it, her, she, whatever, shown itself any kind of real evidence besides just what human beings wrote about? Okay. Atheism, so anarchism kind of answers a little bit about the God stuff, but anarchism is more about why organisms go about their business the way they do, why the universe functions, because there's no rules. There's patterns, there's the law of gravity, there's energy, right? And there's organisms feeding, but there's no, beyond that, there are no rules, right? And then there's atheism, and that answers whether or not there's a God that created us, created life on this planet. planet or created the universe, and I'm somewhat agnostic atheist, meaning, we're all products of the universe. How the universe got here, somewhat of a mystery. Is there a sentient, omnipotent being that created the universe? Probably not. Definitely not one of the main gods. No Jesus, no Christian God, no Islamic God, no whatever other type of religion out there. So atheism is the second truth. Well, it doesn't really matter what order you put them in. But it's the other truth that says there's no God. And for me, being raised Roman Catholic, for the first 18 years of my life, I had the Christian God drilled into my head. So, religion, like the late, great Bill Hicks once said, religion and beliefs are just what we're taught. So I want to get into a whole big thing about, what you believe and all that. So everyone's free to believe whatever. I mean, they're going to, whether I do this video or not, whether I exist or not. I'm going to be dead within the next X years, 30, 20, who knows, right?
Shit.
These discussions will continue, so. I was raised Roman Catholic and I left it behind. I've never encountered a God or spoke to a God or had visions, and so it's kind of weird that if there was a God, at least if there was a Catholic God, why I was able to leave. Right? I mean, you would think if there was a Christian God, I would be able to leave the religion behind. That's kind of how I think a little bit about it. But anyway, so atheism, that's the truth. And it's liberating to know there is no God, because I don't have to answer to anyone. I don't have to follow any rules. I don't have to live a certain way. I live however I choose, in whatever manner suits me from day to day. I'm free to choose my philosophy and my outlook, my perspective, without fear of eternal damnation or any of that. And while it might be a little anxiety-inducing at first, maybe depressing to think there's no afterlife, that this is it. You get one life. When you die, total cessation of consciousness. You won't even know you're dead. You'll be gone for all eternity. While the universe and the earth just keeps on turning. And that's it. So that can be a little horrifying. But I think it's very freeing, very liberating, and very positive. To know that there is no God. That I don't have to jump through hoops. I don't have to appease the God. No sacrifices. I don't have to sacrifice our son in some blood sacrifice ritual like certain cultures did thousands of years ago. I don't have to do anything. I just live my life how I want. And like I said, and so that's another great liberating truth. Atheism. It's a great thing. So, I don't think there's anything else more I need to say about that. Let's bring up the last third truth, and that is nihilism. And then we'll get into what these things have in common. Nihilism, in case you're new to this, is basically that there's not something to an extreme, you could say that we don't even exist. The universe doesn't exist. Right? But I don't know about that. I think that's kind of taking things too far. I feel like I exist. I don't think this is a simulation. Right? But nihilism basically answers the meaning of life. There is no meaning. There's no meaning to life. There's no purpose. There's just energy, chaos, randomness, and then the organisms need to eat and maybe reproduce. And that's it. And that's another liberating truth, because it's like, okay, well, it can be depressing. It maybe the thought itself that there is no purpose, there is no meaning, can seem, wow, you think that there's no meaning? Wow, you're so negative and depressed. No, not at all. It's quite the opposite. It's quite liberating and freeing and positive. Because nihilism says, okay, well, if there's no meaning and no purpose, then it's up to me to make one. And so with anarchism, anarchism is liberating and freeing because I get to decide my own rules, how I want to live, etc. Do I want to live in this society? Do I want to move out to the woods? Do I want to go homeless? Whatever. Now, obviously, there's certain aspects of anarchism in terms of wanting to live a primitive lifestyle. I've talked about this off and on, but just real quick. Get back to nihilism. Anarchism, I didn't really learn it until in my 30s when my entire life was about learning math, science, English, getting a job. No one ever taught me how to make tools, how to hunt and forage. We don't do that anymore. So it's not like I learned about anarchism, and then it's like, man, I would like to live in the jungle and hunt and gather. Okay, I'm just going to go do that. By then, I already had met my girlfriend. The only knowledge I have is how to function in this society. And then we started a family. So I'm not just going to up and leave and abandon my wife and son so I can go live in the forest. And
I have to use a hand as a screwdriver. I can't do it with an automatic.
So, yeah. Alright, so that's that. I just wanted to kind of touch on the anarchism bit a little bit. But nihilism answers the truth about purpose and meaning. There is none. Now, again, you could go into things like that this doesn't exist. You can get into some really more, complex, I'm not going to call it complex, but deeper things about nihilism beyond just the meaning of life. But as far as I'm concerned, and for all practical purposes, nihilism addresses the liberating truth of nihilism, addresses what I think is the fact of life, that there's just no meaning or purpose beyond every organism needing to eat and possibly reproduce. And energy just being energy and random things happening. But I think there is no things don't happen for a certain reason or a purpose. And there's no meaning, and there's no purpose to anything that happens. It's just a random occurrence. Me, all of the choices I made throughout my life.
Okay, I finally got it.
To lead me here to doing this channel. I learned about The technology
Alrighty then,
invented by other humans before.
where's my drill?
You know, we can talk about predeterminism. You know, free will. Does free will really exist? And that's a subject for another video. But yeah, there's no God that created me. Politics, government, they're just man-made constructs. Human beings should probably be living a primitive lifestyle, not necessarily abandoning all the knowledge about medicine. But, I don't want to get into it, but that's kind of my view. Atheism answers that there is no God. Put us here, there's no God, there's no nothing behind the operation and function of the universe or organisms within it. And then nihilism answers that there is no purpose or meaning of the universe or life within the universe, that there's just energy and chemical compounds came together and created life on this planet, and evolution and time, and things just need to eat and reproduce. And there's chemicals to make you feel good, a reward system. But beyond the chemicals, there's no God or anything mysterious behind the workings of organisms in the universe. There's just no meaning, there's no purpose, there's no afterlife, none of it. So that's very liberating. It can be depressing. I don't know which came first, the nihilism or the depression. But if you're going through depression or these kind of thoughts, I've been there, I worked through it. The only thing I can say is maybe you gotta just be patient and kind of allow your perspective to change, but it has to. I could easily say, come here and say, everybody just give up. There's no point, there's no reason why continue living. No, I do.
Okay, I'll have to use the screwdriver again. I can't hold that automatic thing.
I don't agree with this kind of existence within this society. I don't agree how we go about our business. There's a lot of things I don't agree with. But I'm not gonna, I can't change the world. Nor, should I. But, so like I said, I want to live. Even if I don't want to live, my body wants to live. And it's not even so much my body wants to live, it's I am designed, this organism is designed to survive, to eat. And all these thoughts that I have, it's almost like pointless. And all these thoughts, it doesn't really mean anything. I still need to eat. So whether there is a God or not, whether there is any meaning and purpose to everything or not, whether there should be some or not, whether I vote or don't vote, whether I live in society or live in the woods, whether I want to think the word of God or not word of God, all that stuff is inconsequential. I still need to do what I can to eat. That, my friend, is the meaning of life, not the number 42. Not whether or not there's a God, how we should be living. No. Where's my next meal coming from? And then produce, and then sleep, and then repeat it all over again the next day, and the next day. Do what I can to eat, get the food, satisfy my hunger and my thirst. Rest. Do whatever until I'm hungry again. Repeat those steps. Sleep. Wake up the next day and repeat again. And then do whatever to keep your sanity from coming to or facing the daily realization that the whole purpose of my existence every day is to just eat. That's really it. All this video stuff, making money, a job, promoting.
There.
It's just.
Now, will it close?
Busy work. Stuff you do in between eating.
No.
So, that's the meaning of life. Eat. Maybe reproduce if you want. Human beings have that choice. Most other animals reproduce. Not by choice, but based on time of year.
Anyways, that's it.
Basically telling them. But I'm pretty sure.
Oh, fuck.
Whales, dolphins, while they might have intercourse for pleasure at times, I'm pretty sure they're not like thinking about reproducing
I need a light.
for fun. I think they're following, they're not obviously as intelligent as us. They're kind of answering very primal instincts. I mean, we still, answer our instincts too. But again, okay, so I'm kind of getting a little far off topic, but yeah, so let's move on, or let's get to the whole point of this video. Let's bring all three. So we bring them all together, and right, a Venn diagram. So there's a little space that they all share. Trying to get all these something like this. It could be a little bit better here, but to me that space should be much bigger if we just put anarchism, atheism, nihilism all together. Then the space, and that's the common thing they all have in common, but just to make it so we can see the words. Okay, we'll just keep everything like that. Okay, here we go. So there's a little space in the middle. So this is the basic Venn diagram. Could be 2 circles, whatever. I don't really use Venn diagrams on a daily basis. I don't even know how useful they are. But it's the thing that popped in my mind.
Okay, so that's the reason why.
My thoughts about each of these separate schools of thought. Right? Usually when you think about these things, most people think about atheism. And then some of those people think about nihilism. Right? Nihilism, there's no meaning, there's nothing, there's no God, and all that. So usually if someone is thinking or researching whatever about the existence or lack of existence of a God, sometimes they'll end up thinking about
I'll have to use a hand screwdriver.
Maybe they're not thinking about the word itself, but they're thinking about, well, if there's no God, then there's no meaning, blah, blah, blah. So these are the 2 liberating truths, or the 2 truths that I think are most common that people think of. And then when you start to think about, well, there's no meaning, there's no God, there's no meaning, what does that mean about society and government and how I should be living? And that's where anarchism comes along, okay? Now, anarchism is a much more heady, much more kind of complex, right? It's very hard to live a true anarchist lifestyle unless you are one of the people living today. One of the uncontacted tribes. There's not too many people left. But there are some truly indigenous people.
North Sentinel Island.
Most of them in the forests of the Amazon in Brazil. Uncontacted tribes. There's another tribe on the Sentinelese Islands off the coast of Thailand. The Sentinelese. These are uncontacted tribes who are our ancestors, pretty much, hunter-gatherers. Okay, they, in my opinion, are living a truly nihilistic, atheistic, and anarchist lifestyle. Stoic, you know. Okay, so, and I just kind of lost my train of thought. So most people, you know, usually they encounter atheism or nihilism first. I kind of think when it comes to trying to understand their place in life, the meaning of life, that sometimes eventually they'll come across anarchism, or maybe they find out about anarchism first, I don't know. But it's my opinion that anarchism is the lesser known of the three. Alright. But in any event, we have these three. And this is the reason why I'm here, why I'm doing this video, is the commonality, what they have in common. And I'm not sure if any philosopher, Karl Marx, Emma Goldman, Bakunin, you name it, has ever looked at these three different schools of thought and what they have in common. And I'm not trying to say I'm racist. I know some of those different folks have talked about Karl Marx, has talked about communism, anarchism. I don't know if he's ever mentioned nihilism and atheism. You know, I don't know if those other folks have this necessarily a Venn diagram that talked about the relationship of these three, yet somewhat related philosophies, ideology.
Oh, man. I've been doing that for an hour. Shaggy's about to get blind drunk again. Almost got it, Hammer. I'm sweating everywhere. Yeah, I'm sweating. I don't know how to fix this. Yeah. Well, I'm going to go ahead and end the stream. This is going to get pretty nasty, and I don't want to show this on stream.